What's good, gamers? Aquilon here, and welcome back to each and every one of you. I know, we're talking about it again, and most of you are probably thinking, oh my god, Aquilon, can we just move on? No one cares anymore, we've seen the interview. No, we cannot move on because I have not been able to move on. Ever since the interview dropped and we made the video on it, I have been thinking about this consistently. This whole unreliable narrator and what exactly does it mean for World of Warcraft? I've had so many emotions. I feel like I'm going insane. So that's why I'm making this video, because it's my channel and I can talk about whatever the hell I want. All right, so let's set the scene for those of you that haven't seen the video yet. In a very recent interview, the Blizzard developers, specifically the two people in charge of telling the story, came out and said that they have no problem with, inconsistencies within the story. So, in other words, when they made a mistake and they sort of put out a story that doesn't fit with the history of the lore, and basically just retconning it. And the way they do it, more often than not, is with an unreliable narrator. Now, the form that this ultimately took in the community is the point of view storytelling. For those of you that don't know what point of view storytelling is, it is basically what it says, right? In narrative, you have two options. You can tell the story from the god perspective, or you can tell it from the character's perspective. In World of Warcraft, it's sort of a mix of the two, right? Sometimes you have the POV, and other times you have the god that is saying things and sort of pointing things out to you, and Blizzard sort of goes and retroactively changes this. This created a lot of outrage and a lot of anger, myself included. Now, before we start, let me be clear. I am a massive, massive fan of POV storytelling. You see all of these books? Like, literally all of these, right? These are Warhammer 40k books. All of them here. They are all POV. Like, 100%. This book here, Pariah, for example, this one here, Pariah, is written as Bequin's diary. It's her journal. You're literally reading her journal. That's the book. The book is like, you can see how she's writing to herself, and then in the book she goes, no, that's not important. I'll tell you about this maybe another time. You don't need to know this right now. So that's how this reads. It's incredible. But that's all of the Warhammer 40k books. So I'm a huge fan of it. But for some reason, it doesn't sit well with me in World of Warcraft. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about the POV thing, but we're also going to talk about a number of other things that I believe currently creates sort of a perfect mixture of problems within World of Warcraft, and specifically within how the story is being told. If you're gonna do POV in World of Warcraft, you just have to be very clear, and I'm not lying about that. The reader, the player needs to know that what they're seeing is a point of view. You cannot retroactively do that, right? You can't sell something as truth, and then when you don't want it to be true anymore, you go, oh, unreliable narrator, because we know, right? But then I had more time to think, and I sort of asked myself, well, why does Noble have such a big problem with the POV storytelling? Surely Noble, has read books, and there's a ton of books that do POV storytelling. Why is this such a big problem for Noble and for the rest of the community? And then it struck me. It's a video game. It's fundamentally not a book. POVs work really well in books, where you have a giant amount of setup, exposition, inner monologue. You have like a whole slew of things that go alongside it. In World of Warcraft, the POV often is us, the player, right? We are the point of view. We see these things transpire in front of us. And when you then go around and say, oh, never mind, we've changed that, it doesn't feel great, because I was there, I saw this happen. Like, I saw it with my own eyes. I heard him say the words, and now you're pretending like he never said the words in the first place, or I just heard wrong, but I don't think I heard wrong. So it doesn't work for WoW. the POV thing just simply does not work. That's not to say that it couldn't work in World of Warcraft, but that was sort of retconned in Cataclysm. They removed that entire potential storyline. So for those of you that didn't know, and I think it's Cataclysm, it may have been a little bit earlier, but for those of you that didn't know, originally, the earliest events of World of Warcraft, the Slaying of Cthulhu, Naxxramas, all of these things, we, the player, weren't actually involved in those events. Those events, from a canonical lore perspective, were attributed to heroes of the Alliance and of the Horde, Jaina, or Arthas, or, Varian, or whoever, right? Pick one. Garrosh, for example, right? These heroes would be the ones that would do these incredibly great things. We simply represented the armies of the Horde and the Alliance, and we were sort of the cannon fodder. And it worked really well, because this allowed Blizzard that sort of safety net of being like, well, we can change things because you, the player, weren't actually there. But it also created a number of other problems. Insofar as, but I was there, right? I was in the room when Cthulhu died. I remember what Cthulhu said. I heard him say those words. And so Blizzard decided, I believe it was at the beginning of Cataclysm, to retroactively change everything and make it so that no, the player is actually the one that was involved in all of these events. And that's also around the time that we became the champion rather than just a normal adventurer. It had its pros, but it also had its cons. Like almost all things do, there is no system that will just be good. All systems are going to inherently have something bad, but also something good on the side of it. The problem with the POV thing in World of Warcraft is the narrator is us, the player. And when you say that it's just unreliable, what you're effectively doing is you're calling us liars. And that doesn't feel great. I don't know about you, but I don't particularly like being called a liar. So yeah, that's sort of the first part of what I think is massively, massively wrong with World of Warcraft storytelling, is that the developers have not seemed to figure out that they're not writing a book. They are, in fact, writing a game that the player is actively playing. Then we come to another problem. And I would argue that this problem is actually far greater than the POV problem, because the two compound onto one another and it creates something much, much worse towards the end result. And that is what I would call snapshot storytelling. You see, in World of Warcraft, we have this snapshot storytelling. It is sort of Blizzard's preferred mode of storytelling. What do I mean by that? I mean, when we see a story, it is a snapshot of a specific time in the future or in the past. It is not a continuation of a timeline within which we play. So it is simply a snapshot. We see a specific moment in time, and that moment will then set up some of the gameplay features later on, but that moment will oftentimes not be set up at all. A great example of this would be the cinematic where Farak wants to burn Marithra's son. There is no exposition for that cinematic. None. It has not been set up. How did he catch him? How did this happen? What exactly transpired? The player wasn't involved in that moment at all. The moment simply happens, and then it's over. And the only reason that moment happens is because Blizzard needs an excuse to get us into the dream. And this is that excuse. This sets it up so that they can take us into the dream. Snapshot storytelling. It doesn't work, obviously, as we've seen. None of the cinematics that are meant to really elicit very emotional responses have hit in this expansion. No one is emotional about any of the cinematics in this expansion. Why aren't we emotional about these? Because why would I be? I watched that cinematic with the Green Dragon and Farak, and I couldn't care less. If Farak burned him to a crisp, I would not care. I genuinely would not matter to me. There is no setup. There is no continuation from that storyline. I'll ask you guys a question. is the Dragonflight or the aspects actually fighting for their very survival and for the survival of the Dragon Isles? Are they actually fighting? No, they're in Valdrakken, chilling like a villain, you know, just sitting on the top of the spire, looking pretty. That's the point. That's why I call it snapshot storytelling. Alexstrasza and the other flight or the other aspects are involved when it serves the story. Oh, we'll send Alexstrasza here. She'll have a conversation with Veranov because that serves our story, and then she goes back and she sits on the top of Valdrakken. No storylines that show Alexstrasza's involvement in the war. No actions that shows how Alexstrasza is off fighting somewhere or, you know, off sort of moving her troops around. They're just chilling at the top of the spire. We are the ones running around doing all of these things, but the things we're doing isn't necessarily even connected to the stories that's being told, because for Blizzard, it almost feels like highlights, right? We never get to read the article. We get to see the highlights of the article. So Blizzard shows us Farak captures Green Dragon, nearly kills him. The article has been blanked out. Then they show us Veranov and Alexstrasza meet for the first time in intense encounter. The article is blanked out. You know, so we get these sort of headlines of stories, but we don't actually get to read the story. We don't get to play through the story. Now, the second you start merging that with POV storytelling, it starts to make sense why the story in World of Warcraft has completely fallen flat. Why no one cares. People are checked out. I get so many comments on my videos from people saying, dude, love your speculation, but sadly, I just don't care about WoW lore anymore. And these are people that's still playing. They're still playing the game. They've just completely given up on the lore. The lore no longer speaks to them. Why? Well, why would it? There is no real story in World of Warcraft. There is a collection of headlines that leads from one side to the next. None of those headlines have any exposition, nor explanation, nor aftermath of any kind. Why would people care? When's the last time there's been a cinematic in World of Warcraft that actually plucked at your heartstrings that wasn't of a character that basically has been set up for decades? I'll wait. We'll be here forever, because you won't be able to think of a single one. None of the new characters matter in World of Warcraft because none of them have any exposition nor explanation. They came in as highlights. Princess Talanji, introduced as supposedly a new hero. She hasn't been seen yet, right? Since she's completely gone. The Horde Council, supposedly the new way of ruling the Horde. Nothing has happened with their story whatsoever. It hasn't moved forward in any way, shape, or form. Kalia Menethil, supposed to be the savior of the Forsaken. Very little involvement for most of it, and, you know, sort of only brought back as a bit of a token in the Forsaken Heritage questline. What even is Ysera? Ysera was brought back, informed us that she can no longer be the aspect, and since then, nothing. You see, her highlight or her headline has not popped up yet, and Blizzard has no interest in telling her story. Blizzard has no interest in involving the player in the exposition of that, because for Blizzard, it is entirely fine to just go headline to headline to headline. This creates a massive problem within World of Warcraft, and it is one that I don't know if it is salvageable, because I don't even think Blizzard knows that this is wrong. If I'm very honest with you, reading through that article, the interview, Blizzard appears to think that they're doing a bang-up job of this story. You know, they claim that you can really spot how much fun they're having in writing this story. I'll be honest with you, mate, I don't spot that, because I'm not having fun playing it. You know, remember what I told you guys, there are like incredible moments of storytelling in Dragonflight, and there are some juicy plot points that could evolve further. The problem is that none of those will actually be done justice because Blizzard seems to be completely allergic to telling the story. They just refuse. They will not tell a story. You know, come hell or high water, I will not fucking tell the players a story. And I say, okay, but unless you tell us the story, what are we supposed to do? Like, how am I supposed to care about any of this? If you don't even care, because quite clearly you don't. You think it's okay to just do a bunch of, you know what, fuck it. I'm just ranting at this point. I think you can tell that I'm very annoyed at this entire situation, and I apologize for that because I don't want to be annoyed. I want to enjoy the game. You know, I want to enjoy this. Fuck, I'm done. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe over on Patreon if you haven't already. $1 a month keeps this channel free from sponsorships. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna get out of here. Peace.